Hi, today I'm going to read Mr. Topsy-Turvey by Roger Hargreaves. Mr. Topsy-Turvey was a funny sort of fellow. Everything about him was either upside down or inside out or back to front, topsy-turvy in fact. It was all very extraordinary. Even his hat is upside down. Can you see? To give you some idea of how topsy-turvy Mr. Topsy-Turvy was, you ought to see his house. The front door is upside down to start with. Can you see it's upside down? And the curtains are hung upside down in the windows. Oh, that's very strange. And just look at the chimney pot. That's upside down as well. All very extraordinary. Inside is the same. Just look at the clock standing on the mantelpiece of Mr. Topsy-Turvy's house. It's all back to front. Isn't that the topsiest-turviest clock you've ever seen? Can you see it's going 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's all the wrong way round, isn't it? Although, probably looking on here, it might be the right way round because it's the other way round. And just look at the way Mr. Topsy-Turvy reads his books. Do you read your books like that? We don't read them upside down, do we? No. Not only does he read his books upside down, but he starts to read at the back. That's strange, isn't it? So he knows what happens at the end before he starts. And just look where Mr. Topsy-Turvy puts his stamp when he sends his letter. Have you ever seen anything like it? He's put the stamp at the bottom of the envelope, but you're meant to put it at the top. Now this story is all about the time Mr. Topsy-Turvy came to town where you and I live. Nobody is quite sure how Mr. Topsy-Turvy got there or where he came from, but he did arrive because someone saw him getting off the train. The trouble was, he did it in a topsy-turvy way and got out the wrong side and fell onto the railway line. Ow! Which really isn't surprising at all, is it? Poor Mr. Topsy-Turvy. When he picked himself up and managed to find his way out of the station, Mr. Topsy-Turvy went to a hotel to find a room to spend the night. He's even holding his briefcase the wrong way up. We don't do that, do we? The hotel manager tried to smile when he saw Mr. Topsy-Turvy walk into the hotel, carrying his suitcase upside down, and his hat, with his topsy-turvy hat on his head, upside down. "Good afternoon, sir," he said. "Can I help you?" Now, something you didn't know about Mr. Topsy-Turvy is the way he speaks. You see, he sometimes gets things the wrong way round. Oh dear. "Afternoon, good," said Mr. Topsy-Turvy to the hotel manager. "I'd room alike." The manager scratched his head. You mean you'd like a room?" "Please, yes," said Mr. Topsy-Turvy. Eventually, the hotel manager managed to work out what Mr. Topsy-Turvy was talking about, and he was taken up in a lift to his bedroom. Then Mr. Topsy-Turvy unpacked his suitcase, put on his pyjamas, and went to bed. He was rather tired after travelling from wherever he'd come from. The following day, Mr. Topsy-Turvy went to town. But what a fuss his going to town had caused. Can you see the taxis banged into the traffic lights? Red, amber and green. He took a taxi from the hotel, but so confused the taxi driver, trying to tell him where he wanted to go, the poor man drove straight into the traffic lights. "Oh dear," said Mr. Topsy-Turvy. "I'm very sorry." Then he went into a big department store. He walked up to one of the counters. "I'd like a sock of pears," he said to the lady behind the counter. "You mean a pair of socks?" She smiled and showed him a pair of bright red socks. Look, he's put them on his hands. He's meant to put them on his feet. Mr. Topsy-Turvy put them on his hands. Then he tried to leave, but Mr. Topsy-Turvy But being Mr. Topsy-Turvy, he tried to walk up the escalator when you're meant to go down the escalator. And all the people were coming up the escalator all fell all over themselves. Oh dear, it was a terrible topsy-turvy jumble. That day, Mr. Topsy-Turvy did all sorts of topsy-turvy things. He walked backwards across the street and caused an enormous traffic jam. Oh dear, can you see? It's going backwards. He went to the library and put all the books upside down on the shelves and made everybody extremely cross. Then he went to an art gallery instead of hanging all the pictures upside down so he could look at them properly. You'd have to stand on your head and look at those, wouldn't you? And then, after Mr. Topsy-Turvy had been in the town for just one day, he disappeared. Nobody knew where he went or where he went, but he certainly went because he wasn't there anymore. The whole town breathed a sigh of relief, but when the town discovered, even though Mr. Topsy-Turvy had left, was that everything was still topsy-turvy. "Read all about it," shouted the newspaper seller instead of shouting, "Read all about it. News is the here," said the television newsreader instead of saying, "Here is the news." "Morning, morning, good," people started saying to each other as they met. "Do you know how?" instead of "How do you do?" Everybody was talking topsy-turvy. Can you think of something to say that's topsy-turvy? Go on, try. That might be quite fun to do. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.